The CEO of a well-known restaurant chain was feeling worried. He had heard some things about how the workers were treated in his restaurants. Some customers had said the service was slow, and some workers looked tired and unhappy. The CEO, whose name was Mr. Lewis, did not want to just believe what others said, wanted to see everything for himself. He wanted to know how the workers really felt and how the restaurant was really run. But he did not want to just visit as the CEO where everyone would act differently in front of him. He wanted to go undercover. One day, Mr. Lewis made a big decision. He decided to work as a dishwasher in one of his busiest restaurants. He thought that by working there, he would see the real life of his workers. He could talk to them, listen to their stories, and understand the problems they faced every day. He wanted to be sure he was not missing anything important. Many times, bosses do not know what happens inside because employees hide problems or are afraid to speak up. Mr. Lewis wanted to change that. He told only a few people about his plan. They were surprised but respected his decision. He did not want anyone to know that he was the CEO. He wanted to wear simple clothes, like the other workers, and work the same long hours. He even practiced washing dishes so he would not stand out on his first day. He was nervous, but ready. On the morning of his first day, Mr. Lewis put on a uniform. It was a plain shirt and pants with a small cap on his head. He looked like any other dishwasher who worked in the restaurant. When he entered the kitchen, it was very noisy. He could hear pots banging, water splashing, and the sound of people talking quickly. The kitchen was hot and crowded. Everyone was moving fast. Mr. Lewis started washing dishes. At first, it was harder than he thought. The dishes were dirty, and he had to scrub many plates and pans. His hands got wet and slippery. The water was hot, and the air smelled like food and cleaning soap. He saw how fast the other workers moved. Some were chopping vegetables, some were cooking on the stove, and some were cleaning tables. Everyone looked busy. As he worked, Mr. Lewis tried to watch and listen carefully. He saw some workers smile and joke, but many looked tired and worried. He noticed the dishwasher near him was a young man named Daniel. Daniel looked very tired, but kept working without stopping. Mr. Lewis asked him how long he had been working. Daniel said, "Since early morning." Mr. Lewis asked if he had a break. Daniel said, "Not yet. I work until all dishes are done." Mr. Lewis realized that Daniel was working hard. He saw that Daniel did not complain or ask for help. Daniel just kept going, washing dish after dish. Mr. Lewis felt a little ashamed. He thought, "This is what my workers go through every day. I need to learn more." During his breaks, Mr. Lewis talked quietly with some workers. He asked them simple questions about their jobs and how they felt. Many said the work was hard and the hours were long. Some said the managers were strict and did not always listen. A few workers said they worked extra hours, but did not always get paid for them. Mr. Lewis was shocked by this. He decided to watch more carefully. One evening, he noticed Daniel stayed long after the kitchen had closed. Daniel was still washing dishes, even though his shift ended hours ago. Mr. Lewis asked, "Why are you still here? Shouldn't you be finished?" Daniel replied quietly, "I had to cover for someone else. I worked 2 shifts today." Mr. Lewis wanted to know if Daniel was paid for the extra hours. Daniel looked down and said, "No, the manager says it's okay because we are a team, but I need the money, so I work." Mr. Lewis felt his heart tighten. He never expected this. He thought his company cared about its workers. But here was a young man working double shifts without pay because he had no choice. Mr. Lewis decided to keep learning more. He knew this was just one example, but it might be part of a bigger problem. On his last day working undercover, Mr. Lewis felt tired but thankful. He had seen a side of his business he never knew before. He had met workers like Daniel, who worked with a quiet strength and hope. Mr. Lewis knew he had a lot to do when he returned to his office. He promised himself to make changes that would help his workers feel respected and fairly treated. Mr. Lewis took off his uniform and looked at himself in the mirror. He felt different. It's not just because of the dirt and sweat, but because he understood something important. Being a CEO was not just about making money. It was about caring for the people who made the business possible. Now he was ready to act. After spending a few days working undercover in the restaurant, Mr. Lewis grew more curious about the young dishwasher named Daniel. Daniel was different from the others. He worked with a quiet strength that caught Mr. Lewis's attention. Though Daniel looked tired, he never complained or asked for special treatment. Instead, he kept working hard, cleaning every dish as if it was the most important job in the world. One afternoon, during a short break, Mr. Lewis found a moment to talk more with Daniel. They sat in a small, quiet corner behind the kitchen. Mr. Lewis asked gently, "Daniel, how long have you been working here?" Daniel looked at the floor for a moment before answering. "I started 6 months ago," he said softly. "I needed a job, and this was the only one I could find quickly." Mr. Lewis nodded. He understood that many people sometimes had to take jobs that were hard or not perfect because they needed money to live. He wanted to learn more about Daniel's life. "Do you like your job here?" he asked. Daniel shrugged. "It's not easy. The work is hard, and sometimes the hours are long, but I do what I can. I have to send money to my family. My father is sick, and my mother can't work." Hearing this, Mr. Lewis felt a deep respect for Daniel. Here was a young man working hard not just for himself, but to help his family. Mr. Lewis knew that many of his employees had stories like this. They were working quietly behind the scenes, often without anyone noticing. Then, Mr. Lewis asked a question that made Daniel hesitate. "Do you get paid for all the hours you work?" Daniel looked down and said, "Not always. Sometimes the manager asks us to stay late if it is busy. But we don't always get paid for the extra time. They say it's because we are a team helping each other, but I think it's not fair." Mr. Lewis's heart sank. He had hoped his company treated workers fairly, but now he saw that things were not right. He decided to watch more carefully. The next evening, Mr. Lewis stayed in the kitchen until it was quiet and most workers had left. Daniel was still washing dishes, his hands tired but steady. Mr. Lewis asked, "Why are you still here, Daniel? Your shift ended hours ago." Daniel sighed. "I had to cover for a worker who did not come today. The manager asked me to stay, but said I wouldn't get paid extra. I need the money, so I stayed." Mr. Lewis thought about this. Daniel was working double shifts, sometimes without pay, just to keep his job and support his family. This was not right. No one should have to work so hard and not be treated fairly. Mr. Lewis knew he had to learn more about the situation. Started quietly asking other workers if they had similar experiences. Many nodded and said yes. Some were afraid to speak openly because they worried about losing their jobs. Others said they worked extra hours but never saw that time on there. Paychecks. One cook said, "The manager expects us to work more than our shifts, especially when it's busy. But if we complain, we get warnings or lose ours next week." Mr. Lewis realized this was a big problem. His restaurant was not just a place to serve food. It was a place where people worked hard to live better lives. If they were treated unfairly, the whole business would suffer. Workers would feel unhappy, tired, and maybe leave for other jobs. The customers might see the difference too. Over the next few days, Mr. Lewis continued working undercover. He paid close attention to how schedules were made and how pay was recorded. He saw that the manager often changed the schedules at the last minute without telling workers in advance. Sometimes workers had to cover shifts for sick or absent colleagues but were not paid for that time. Mr. Lewis also noticed the workers' faces. Some looked worried or stressed. Others tried to hide their feelings with a smile. He understood that many were afraid to speak up because they needed the job. One evening, Mr. Lewis stayed late again. He saw Daniel cleaning the kitchen alone. Tired but still working, Mr. Lewis decided to ask more questions. "Daniel, have you ever tried to talk to the manager about this?" he asked. Daniel shook his head. "No, I'm afraid. I don't want to lose my job. I have bills to pay and my family depends on me. If I lose this job, things will be worse." Mr. Lewis felt a strong responsibility. He knew he had to do something to help these workers. He also felt thankful that he had come to the restaurant undercover. If he had only heard the reports, he might not have understood the full story. At the end of his undercover work, Mr. Lewis sat down and thought carefully. He had learned about Daniel and many others working hard, sometimes without fair pay or respect. This was a problem he could not ignore. He decided to return to his office and take action. Mr. Lewis knew that to make a real change, he would have to face difficult conversations with the managers and possibly change the way the company worked, but he was ready. He wanted to make the restaurant a better place for all workers. He wanted to make sure that no one had to work double shifts without pay. He wanted Daniel and others to feel valued and respected. As he left the restaurant that night, Mr. Lewis felt a new determination. He was no longer just a CEO far away from the kitchen. He was someone who had seen the hard work and struggles of his employees up close. He promised himself that he would not forget what he had learned. After returning to his office, Mr. Lewis could not stop thinking about what he had seen in the restaurant. He felt a strong sense of responsibility. He knew he had to dig deeper to understand the full situation. He wanted to find out if the problem was only in that one restaurant or if it was happening in others too. So, he began a quiet and careful investigation. Mr. Lewis first asked his trusted team to help him look into the work schedules and payroll records. They reviewed many papers and computer files. At first, everything looked normal on paper. When they compared the schedules to the actual hours the workers had been in the restaurant, something did not add up. They found that many workers had worked extra hours that were not recorded in the system. This meant they had not been paid for those hours. The difference was clear and could not be ignored. Mr. Lewis felt a heavy weight on his shoulders. This was a serious problem that needed a serious solution. Next, Mr. Lewis decided to talk to some managers from other restaurants in the chain. He wanted to know if they knew about these extra unpaid hours. Some managers said they tried to be fair, but they admitted that sometimes they asked workers to stay longer without proper pay. They said it was because the restaurant was busy and they needed help. Others said they did not know exactly how many hours the workers were doing. They trusted the schedules but did not check the actual work carefully. Mr. Lewis understood that this lack of attention had allowed the problem to grow. He also spoke to some supervisors who worked closely with the staff. They told Mr. Lewis that workers were often afraid to complain. They worried about losing their jobs or getting in trouble if they said something. This fear made it easy for some managers to ignore the rules about fair pay and rest times. Mr. Lewis thought about Daniel and how brave he was to work so hard without asking for more. But he also knew that Daniel should not have had to work like that in the first place. No worker should feel afraid or forced to work extra without pay. After gathering all this information, Mr. Lewis made a plan. He wanted to fix the problem quickly and carefully. The first step was to meet with the regional managers and explain what he had found. He shared the stories of workers like Daniel and showed the evidence of unpaid hours. The regional managers were surprised and some were upset. They said they did not want their restaurants to have these problems. But Mr. Lewis made it clear that things must change. He said, "We have a responsibility to our workers. They are the heart of this business. We cannot let unfair practices continue." Next, Mr. Lewis decided to suspend the manager from the restaurant where Daniel worked. This manager had allowed unpaid overtime and did not protect the workers. The suspension was a serious warning to others that the company would not tolerate this behavior. Mr. Lewis then introduced new rules for all restaurants in the chain. These rules included better tracking of work hours, clear schedules shared in advance, and strict policies about paying workers for all their time. He also set up a way for workers to report problems safely and without fear. To make sure these changes worked, Mr. Lewis sent a team to visit each restaurant. The team talked to workers and managers, checked schedules, and helped train the staff on the new rules. Mr. Lewis wanted to be sure that the company was becoming a fair and respectful place for everyone. At the same time, Mr. Lewis reached out to Daniel. He wanted to tell him about the changes and to thank him for his hard work and honesty. Daniel was surprised but happy to hear that the CEO cared about him and the other workers. Mr. Lewis told Daniel that the company would pay him for all the extra hours he had worked and that they would look for ways to support him more. Daniel felt proud and hopeful, said, "Thank you, sir. This means a lot to me." With these actions, Mr. Lewis showed that he was serious about changing the culture of his company. He wanted to build trust between management and workers. He knew that happy and fairly treated employees would work better and help the business grow. As time passed, Mr. Lewis kept checking on the restaurants. He read reports and talked to workers whenever he could. The changes were not always easy. Some managers resisted, and some old habits took time to change. But Mr. Lewis was patient and firm. He believed that with effort, the company could become a place where everyone felt safe, respected, and valued. One day, Mr. Lewis visited the restaurant where he had worked undercover. This time, he went openly as the CEO. He was welcomed warmly by the workers. Daniel came to greet him with a big smile. The kitchen felt different, calmer, and more positive. Mr. Lewis watched as the workers helped each other, took proper breaks, and laughed together. He felt proud of the progress. He knew there was still work to do, but the first steps had been taken that night. Mr. Lewis sat in his office thinking about his journey. From working as a dishwasher to making big changes in the company, he had learned important lessons. He realized that leadership was not just about giving orders, but about listening, caring for people. He knew that every worker had a story like Daniel's, a story of hope, struggle, and hard work. And he promised himself that he would always remember that behind every plate washed, every meal cooked, was a person deserving respect and fairness. After the investigation, Mr. Lewis knew that he had to act quickly. The situation was serious. Many workers were being treated unfairly, working extra hours without getting paid. This was not only wrong, but also illegal. Mr. Lewis felt a heavy responsibility on his shoulders. He had to fix the problem and make sure it never happened again. He called a meeting with the top managers of the company. They gathered in the big conference room, ready to hear what he had to say. Mr. Lewis stood in front of them and spoke clearly. "I have been working undercover in one of our restaurants. What I saw was very concerning. Some workers are working double shifts and not getting paid. This is unfair and against our company values." The managers looked at each other, some with surprise, others with worry. Mr. Lewis continued, "We cannot allow this to continue. Our workers deserve respect and fair treatment. We must change how we operate. Starting now," Mr. Lewis announced. Immediate actions. The manager of the restaurant where the unpaid overtime was found was suspended while a full review took place. This sent a clear message that such behavior would not be tolerated anywhere in the company. He also introduced new policies to protect workers. One important rule was that every hour worked must be recorded and paid. No exceptions. A worker covers a shift or stays late, they must be paid fairly. We will track all hours closely. Mr. Lewis created a special team to visit all the restaurants and check that these rules were followed. This team would speak with workers and managers, making sure everyone understood the new policies. The CEO wanted transparency and fairness. He also set up a way for employees to safely report problems. Workers could now talk about their concerns without fear of losing their jobs or getting punished. This was a big change. Many workers had felt scared to speak up before. Now they had a voice. At the same time, Mr. Lewis reached out personally to Daniel and the other workers affected. He apologized for what they had experienced and promised to fix the mistakes. He made sure Daniel received all the money he was owed for the extra shifts he had worked. Daniel was thankful and surprised. He said, "I didn't think the CEO would care so much. It means a lot that you listened and acted." Mr. Lewis smiled and said, "You deserved better from the start." The changes began to take effect quickly. Managers learned to respect the new rules. Workers started to feel safer and more valued. The work environment became friendlier. People smiled more and helped each other. Mr. Lewis visited the restaurants often to check progress. He listened carefully to the workers' stories. Some told him that before, they felt invisible and ignored. Now, they felt like part of a family. This made Mr. Lewis happy. Of course, change was not always easy. Some managers resisted the new ways. They were used to old habits and did not want to change. Mr. Lewis was firm but fair. He explained why these changes were necessary and gave support to those who wanted to learn. He also made clear that managers who ignored the rules would face serious consequences. This helped everyone understand the importance of fairness and respect. Over time, the company began to see real improvements. Employee turnover decreased. More workers stayed longer and worked with more energy. Customers noticed the better service and the positive mood in the restaurants. Mr. Lewis believed that treating workers was not only the right thing to do, but also smart business. He said, "Happy workers make happy customers." He also shared the story of Daniel and the changes with his whole company. Wanted everyone to understand the importance of respect and fairness. He hoped this story would inspire other businesses to listen to their workers too one day. Mr. Lewis was invited to speak at a business conference. He told the audience about his undercover experience and what he learned. He said, "Sometimes leaders need to step into the shoes of their workers to truly understand their challenges. It changed the way I lead." The story was shared widely in the news. Many people praised Mr. Lewis for his honesty and courage. They saw that he was not just a boss, but a leader who cared deeply about his people. Back at the restaurant where Daniel worked, things had changed for the better. Daniel was no longer afraid to speak up. He'd even been given the chance to train new workers. He felt proud of his job and hopeful for the future. Mr. Lewis visited the restaurant one afternoon. He saw Daniel working with a smile and helping others. The kitchen felt alive with energy and respect. As Mr. Lewis left the restaurant, he felt a deep sense of satisfaction. He knew there was still work to do, but he also knew that the first steps had been made. He had learned that true leadership meant listening, caring, and acting with honesty. He thought about all the workers like Daniel who make businesses run every day. He promised to always remember their stories and to fight for their rights. The journey had changed him, the company, and most importantly, the lives of many hardworking people. And for Mr. Lewis, that was the greatest success of all. After all the changes and hard work, the restaurant began to feel like a new place. The workers, who had once felt tired and afraid, now smiled more and helped each other. Mr. Lewis noticed this change and felt very proud. The restaurant was no longer just a place where food was made. It had become a place where people felt respected and cared for. Daniel, the young dishwasher who worked so hard, was especially happy. He no longer had to work double shifts without pay. He had been given back all the money he was owed. The company also offered him a chance to learn new skills and grow in his job. Daniel worked with a new hope and confidence. He felt proud to be part of the restaurant family. Mr. Lewis knew that this success was not just about money or rules. It was about people. It was about listening to their stories, understanding their struggles, and standing up for what was right. He thought about how easy it was to forget the hard work behind the scenes. But he promised himself never to forget again. He began sharing this story with others. He spoke about the importance of leadership that cares, and how real success comes when workers are treated fairly and kindly. His story was shared in newspapers and on television. Many people were inspired by his honesty and courage to change. Other business leaders began to listen. Some visited Mr. Lewis's restaurants to learn how to treat their workers better. Mr. Lewis felt happy that his experience was helping others too. He believed that when one company changes for the better, it can inspire many others. At the restaurant, the mood continued to improve. Workers like Daniel helped new employees feel welcome. They shared their stories and reminded everyone why fairness mattered. The managers worked harder to create a good place to work. They knew that a happy team was a strong team. Mr. Lewis kept visiting the restaurants often. He wanted to stay close to the people who made the business possible. He listened to their ideas and concerns. He wanted to keep learning and growing as a leader. One day, Mr. Lewis received a letter from Daniel. It was a simple note, but filled with thanks. Daniel wrote about how much his life had changed. He could now support his family without fear. He felt respected and proud. He thanked Mr. Lewis for caring and acting when it mattered most. Mr. Lewis kept that letter on his desk and reminded him every day why his work was important. It was a reminder that behind every dish washed, every meal served, there was a story of hope and hard work. Looking back, Mr. Lewis knew that going undercover was the best decision he ever made. It opened his eyes to the real world of his company. It taught him that leadership was more than titles and money. It was about heart and honesty. He hoped that other leaders would follow his example. He wanted them to listen to their workers, see their struggles, and stand up for fairness. He believed that when workers feel valued, everyone wins: the workers, the customers, and the business. The story of Daniel and the Undercover CEO became a symbol of change. It showed that even in big companies, people matter most. It reminded everyone that kindness, respect, and fairness can change lives. As the sun set over the city, Mr. Lewis stood outside one of his restaurants. He looked at the happy faces of his workers and the busy tables filled with customers, knowing that together they had built something truly special, and he promised to keep fighting for fairness, for respect, and for the workers who make every day possible.